Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Oh, there.
Hello. Now, I asked you if you were ready, so.
Yes, and then you were pantomiming as if you were still figuring stuff out, and then
Well, I kind of was.
Here.
That's true. You're right about that.
Okay, well, happy Muse Day, everyone. I'm not saying happy Muse Day to Dan Kent. I'll say happy Muse Day to Brown Sugar, though. Wait, is that Brown Sugar?
That is not.
No.
You know what? Brown Sugar. It's
what
gone.
Happened?
It got.
What?
It was pretty tattered. It was in tough shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is green sugar. I don't know if that makes any
olive?
sense.
It's olive.
It's like olive. Yeah, right.
Yes. Okay.
So,
I was gonna say, oh, kind of a velvet situation.
No, it's corduroy like brown sugar was.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, and I like the texture of it, and so yeah,
Okay.
so it's one of those weird
a new
things
writing
where
jacket.
what's that? Yeah, it's a new writing jacket. Yeah,
You have a new writing jacket.
I do.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but here's the situation is, and this is I always feel weird about this, but big box stores are sort of they're going the way of the dodo bird, and so and it's sad. So like the Macy's in Maplewood is closing, so everything's half off and 60% off, and it's weird because it's like we were so excited going through there to see what we can save 60% on, and the place is just packed with people, and it's just like we're all vultures, just like like if half of us were there like on a normal day, then the business would still be going, and it's a weird thing. So this is me being a vulture buying this at a dying box store.
And more. No, I'm going to say you and I are so different in so many ways. And I've just discovered another difference. I will not, I absolutely like that situation that you were in, scrounging for goods at Macy's with half of Minnesota. Absolutely not. I cannot, I like neat, orderly. I know where to go. Oh, there's the size, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to be elbowing people to get through this stuff and seeing what I have no tolerance or patience for it.
I think we're probably pretty similar to that. I just because in terms of what I like is that's why I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, because I can go do stuff, and there's I'm the only one on the street. I don't even like to share the streets. That's how stay away from me I am. And but at the same time I have these competing values, because we don't we're not making six figures here. We're kind of we gotta kind of budget pretty aggressively, and so if I can get something that I need for cheap, then I have to compromise somewhere. So
well, there you go. I think people are kind of like, what are they even talking about?
Yeah, probably.
We're talking about olive sugar. Goodbye, brown sugar. Hello, olive sugar. Yep. And now we're going to talk about Greg's sermon from Sunday. Yep. Who or what do you worship? Revelation chapter 7. I'm looking forward to your summary. We're going to have some discussion. We got in a few email comments, and we'll chat about that or not, depending on our time. But all that to say, welcome to the MuseCast. Happy Muse Day. He's Dan Kent. I'm Shawna Boren. You know the scoop, why Dan's wearing what he's wearing, and now we're all set. All of that has been taken care of, and now we're good to go.
Sounds good. Yeah. What did you say the title was? Did you give the title?
Who or what do you worship? What or who? Is that not it?
Oh, no, I think that's right. It's just
okay.
This one was, well, this is a confusing one because he changed the title Saturday night. So all over my notes, I have something else. And so that's
okay.
Very sneaky. Very sneaky, Dr. Boyd. All right. So in this sermon, we're still in Revelation. We're almost done with Revelation 7. And we're looking at these same passages that we've been looking at for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And but what he wanted to look at is he wanted to look at, why do the elders and the creatures and the angels, why do they fall on their face? That's how he starts his sermon off, just asking that. And so he kind of makes 4 points out of the text. And the 4 points are, the first one is that they fall on their face because God's glory is so overpowering. It's just this natural reaction. It's this beatific vision is what it's called in church history. It's the this incredible, like when we actually see God as God is, it so blows our categories and minds that we can't help but fall over in that sort of kind of like head down, just like we're just knocked down by God's beauty. And so that's how powerful God is in God's self. And so it just kind of frames like what we're dealing with here when we're talking about God. And then they're singing this praise to God, and they give this sevenfold proclamation where they can't help but praise God. And Greg argues that these 7 things that they say, he says that they just get to, he just includes 7 things, and so like strength and power, he says are not really different, but they're 7, and so it's like this complete worship, is what Greg says. And he makes this point about how worshiping something sort of completes our enjoyment of it. When we praise something, it's one thing to experience something and the goodness of something, but when we praise it, when we worship it, it brings it to fulfillment. And so that's what our worship is of God. It's like, it's one thing to recognize the good news that life has meaning, and there's a God who loves us, and we're created for a purpose, and those are all great things. But the experience of that really becomes full when we celebrate it, when we proclaim it. And so that's the second kind of part of this, is this the proclamation, the worship of this God. Now, the third point that he makes is like, why the loud voice? Why do they shout out? And part of that is that it's proclaiming this truth, and it's done loudly because I think it makes it stakes a claim that, and I don't think Greg says this, I'm saying this, it stakes this claim, so it sort of solidifies our own perspective to ourselves. But also remember, we are in this spiritual war, and so proclaiming out loud sends a message to the enemy that says, no, I am here, I'm denouncing that, and I'm embracing this. And so the loud proclamation is sort of like an auditory allegiance. It's like it's declaring to the cosmos, this is whose side I am on. And I thought that was an interesting point. And then the fourth point that Greg pulls out of this is that they are proclaiming Christ. And so this sort of like absolute giving themselves over to the Lamb, and not just in words, but also in lifestyle and dying to self. And Greg talks a little bit about that, and he talks about Romans 12:1 and 2, kind of what I talked about the week before, how there is this absolute, giving of the self over to God, this full sort of allegiance to God, and how we need to continue to renew that allegiance to God. And that's sort of what this singing is this is who I am worshiping. This is who I am with. And worship is this sort of renewal of that. It's this refreshing of that. And it's that truth that we give our allegiance to, that we commit to, that we proclaim, that continues to then renew our minds and open our hearts, hopefully. And so those are sort of the big 4 points that Greg pulls out of this text. And then he talks about, if it's true that we're making these proclamations in this spiritual war. And so part of our proclamation is to give our allegiance to God, but it's also simultaneously a denouncement of the enemy. It's a denouncement of Babylon. Well, then part of this is part of the process of getting out of Babylon. And so Greg leaves us with 3 sort of tips on getting out of Babylon. And the first of the 3 tips is that we need to wake up to the beast and see where in the world, where is the mark of the beast in the world? Like, what is the work of this enemy versus what is the work of God? And so we see Greg just speculates on a couple things. He's looking at the perpetual growth machine that is our economy and our civilizations, and how that is wreaking havoc on creation and on nature and on our lives and on our relationships. And when you think of the Satan as the one who comes to steal, kill, and destroy, well, that's exactly what our society is doing to relationships and to the earth. And so what he says is a lot of that stuff that we see in the world, the fracturing, the polarization, the destruction of resources, a lot of that is a spiritual problem. And he quotes Ephesians 6:12, that our enemy is not flesh and blood, but the principalities and powers of this present darkness. And so just waking up to that and just like adjusting our radar so we start to look at our experiences and look at things in the world, and with the question of, is this the work of the beast or is this the work of God? And it's tough because we're we depend on the systems of the world for survival, and so that's the big challenge, is how do you reconcile that? And maybe we can talk a little bit about that problem during our discussion. The second point that he brings out is he says, to the best of our ability, we have to stop feeding this beast. We have to practice moderation, practice contentment. Instead of always striving for more, we have to instead strive for simplicity. And a big part of that is being grateful for what we have. And then the third is he just comes back to that Romans 12 verse and about being transformed by the renewing of our mind, and to continue to live into that story of God as King, and the reality of the spiritual war that we're in, and to live intentionally given what has been revealed, what has been unveiled about God's creation and about the deception that we are all living under, and instead to live intentionally toward the reality that has been revealed. That is my summary.
Nice job, Dan. Way to go. I don't have a ton to add. Okay, let me just say this. I appreciated the, again, challenge reminder. For me, this sermon tied very nicely to your sermon last week. And I will say that I feel like this is one of those times where I say, Greg, quit preaching and went to meddling, because, which is just my way of saying, like, I was, pricked a few times, like, oh yeah, I've got to remember this. And in particular, the 3 practical takeaways about waking up to the beast and denouncing Babylon. And yeah, so you had mentioned that we're going to discuss that a little bit more. I think that's a great idea, because I really do feel like that's, for me, where the rubber meets the road. It's like, man, progress is good and invention is good. And look at us, you're able to be where you are and I'm able to be where I am, but we're together on this screen and we're broadcasting to people that can chat with us, so there's a lot of good And then I feel like the reality is that there is also a line that we all cross because we want to consume, because we want more, because we're not satisfied. And therein is the battle. And I
Yeah.
don't think that it's just, we'll do better. I think it is a spiritual battle. I think we are in many ways conditioned for more and to not be satisfied. And so, and that keeps us wanting to just scrap for more. And typically when you're doing that, eventually other people get in the way of your more.
Yeah.
Other things get in the way of your more. And that's where it really begins to get a little dangerous. And so there's a lot we can dive into there. But I'm always really appreciative whenever, as a church body, we can really examine our hearts and our lives and say, hey, how are we doing with this? And Greg brought up one of the letters from earlier in the series that we felt that, was kind of like a letter to us, to Woodland Hills from God when we were studying the seven churches. And so I like it when we circle back to that stuff. And it definitely just causes me to reflect and to ponder and to think through and not beat myself up. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it's good just to assess where you are with this.
Hmm.
And on the worship end of things, I am so thankful. I will say one of the things I am most thankful for in the way I was raised in the church is a heart for worship. And by this piece of worship, I mean like the actual singing together with
Hmm.
others. I just get so full from that. And I know not everyone does. And so that speaking of the truth, proclaiming, it is this thing where we get to proclaim things about this beautiful, amazing God that we're in a relationship with. But it is also where, for me personally, I have received so many beautiful things from the Spirit of God. I have received encouragement and sometimes a healing, emotional healing, or just something that I needed. It's just for me, and it could be personality. I don't know. It's just always been a very precious part of my faith. And so
Yeah.
anytime we talk about worship, I'm happy. But I also know that it's not just that. Worship isn't just singing of great songs.
Yeah.
Worship is something we do with our life. And you talked about that last week, and Greg continued that this week. That our life is a proclamation, or should be a proclamation, of what is residing in our heart. And so, again, I love it and I'm challenged by it. And
Yeah.
so let's talk about it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Well, the definitely you know, the systems of the world, the beast in the world. What is the result of what the beast is doing in the world, and what is the result of what God is doing in the world? Um,
Yeah.
it's I keep coming back to this quote by Albert Camus in The Myth of Sisyphus, where he says that we get into the habit of living before we develop the skill at thinking. And so
Oh,
by the time we can like actually think logically and to look at the arguments and look at like why and understand why I do what I do, I've already been doing all of these things, and I have this whole momentum of who I am already before I can even analyze it. And so that multiply that by however many people are in the country, and now you've got this societal momentum, and so you have all of these systems that have all of this momentum, and how we put food on the table now, it requires us to kind of endorse this system, to be a part of it, to feed it, and to kind of nurture it, and that's a tough thing, and
hmm.
that's is our only option with that to just say I'm done with the whole thing and to
Right.
live as a hermit in the mountains? I don't know. That's tempting. But I at the same time, God calls us to work and to witness and to be ambassadors. And so I think the worst situation to be in is to just not even be aware that
Yeah.
maybe this system, because we see all of the trinkets, we see all the cool stuff. It's amazing that I can go outside into my driveway where I have a nice little like recliner seat, and I can drive that recliner seat all over town, and with like perfect air control and music, and it's just like that's amazing, and it's so easy to just go through and say, all of this that makes this possible must be good because look at what I'm doing, and to not even question whether or not this is all a good thing. That's the worst situation to be in. And I think, we can't take down that whole system and whatever. This is kind of where we're at now, but to at least be aware that, and to at least question what are all of these conveniences and what are all of these things in my life? What is it doing to my spirit? And at the very least, asking those questions has got to produce some type of fruit, I think.
Dan, I think you've, and I promise we're not going to just stay here the whole time, but I do want to just respond. I think you've hit on a key word there for me as I'm processing this, and it is that word question. Just question things. We are not saying, now, some people are led to go off grid, to do their own thing. And you know what? I mean, you got to do what you feel called and led to do. There are communities that live in such a way that don't particularly feel called to live, but bless them, so this is not us like, mandating anything.
Right.
But I do agree that we need to question stuff and not just live into stuff. We are conditioned, whether we realize it or not, whether we want to admit it or not, we are conditioned to think certain ways. And especially those of us in Western culture, we have been conditioned to grow up and to work for things. And when you want something, you get it, you reward yourself, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with it. I'm just saying maybe question some ways in which we are using up the resources around us that yes, you worked for, that yes, you probably deserve, but are there other uses? Are there other ways that we can accomplish what it is that we're hoping to accomplish when we're feeding ourselves these things? Question, I think, is a huge thing. And that to me ties back to Greg's first practical point of just waking up to the beast, waking up and realizing it. Just because this is the way everyone does it and this is the way it's done doesn't mean it has to be so. Doesn't mean that you can't make adjustments. Doesn't mean that you can't just ask the Lord, hey, are there ways in which maybe I'm not just living in a contented way? And, I'm not living in contentment when I absolutely could be. I'm not talking about your basic needs. Please don't hear me say that. And I know that there are people who are struggling, and that is real. I am saying for those who have the extra, or you think you don't have extra because you're always satisfying what you want when you want it. And it's just asking yourselves those questions. And I think that's huge.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just say this too, just, if you're not asking those questions, then you're also not realizing what might not be of God. And you're also not realizing how this system that might not be fully of God is using you. And I think that's where some of, Greg's second and third point really comes in, where, the system which provides all of these good things also makes us want these good things. There's programming, and there's propaganda, and there's advertisements, and there's all these things that are compelling us toward getting more and better and more convenient and easier. And what that does is it creates a perpetual sense of discontentment, a perpetual sense of disappointment. It takes our attention away from the good things that we have. And I think that waking up to the beast at least allows us then to say, whoa, 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 whoa. I get it. I mean, this is the world that we live in, and we need to have a job, and this is how we get food now. We're not all going to be farmers. And so, we have to figure something out. but that doesn't mean that I'm going to let the system make me be perpetually disappointed. I'm not going to allow that. And so I need to figure out how to be content with what I have. And I think that's really valuable.
Amen. And one of the things you say that has stuck with me, just one, you say, no, I'm kidding. There's a lot that you say that sticks with me. But one thing in particular is like, don't get played. Don't allow yourself to get played, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's just be aware. And I used to think, okay, confession, for me, simplicity was almost a dirty word because I'm the furthest thing from right. It's just not my vibe. However, I am a woman who recognizes when I need to make a shift and maybe I've thought wrongly about something. And I think simplicity is one of those areas in which I've had to shift. It's not a dirty word. It actually can be a good thing when you can just simplify and be thankful and show gratitude and just live in the abundance of the blessings that are before you and without striving for what's next. Ah, it's a beautiful thing. It is a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. And so,
Yeah.
again, we're not, staking claim, making mandates here. We're just saying, hey, let's just wake up. Let's be aware. Let's question some things and not just go along with stuff.
That's right.
Let's not be played. That's what we're saying.
That's right.
Our MuseCast community, they have a lot to say. And we appreciate them so much.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say, brother, Special K, you know how I love you and I appreciate you. And you had a lot to say, and we cannot get to it today. I'm just going to say, we're not ignoring you, but that was a long email, brother. And so there's just a lot to kind of unpack and get through. So to be continued on that one. And then we have another correspondence that came through. Really good, but again, kind of lengthy. And so, Dan, I'm just going to say you take the ball.
Yeah.
You run with this. You kind of talk about what you can, because again, time is a factor. And we do really appreciate your comments and your questions. It's really good. We just can't always get to every single piece of it, what you guys send in. You guys think a lot. You have a lot of questions, and it's so good. Yeah. But we only have this time before us.
Yeah, I'll just say also, not only Special K, but also from last week, Amy sent a really great email that unfortunately we had already recorded, and so I didn't get to it during the show. So I'm going to respond to Amy on email, and then maybe if it comes up again, I'll bring it up here and we could talk about it. But today I want to look at Stephanie sent an email, and again, a lot of thought into this email, and I feel. On one hand, I feel bad, like I can't give it its due justice and just can't read the whole thing. And on top of which, it's such a well thought out email that I want to think more carefully about it as I go through it. But Stephanie was just kind of taken by when Greg said, that they had this sevenfold praise, and part of that praise was strength and power were the two things that they were attributing or proclaiming about God. And Greg, in his kind of offhand way, sort of just said that, strength and power are the same thing. And the important part here is that it's sevenfold, because it's this complete proclamation, this complete glorification of God. And Stephanie took some issue with that, and she argues that no, strength and power are very different things. And I guess what I would say is, so this is kind of what she said. She said, in modern society, power is exercised and strength is shown. Power is an external force where strength is an internal character. And I think that you're right about that, Stephanie. I think that there is a difference. But I'm and Stephanie has all these great verses and stuff. So I just want to say at this point that I think you're onto something right, and I want to think more about it. And I appreciate the comment. The important thing from Greg's perspective is that there are seven, and that signifies this complete sort of glorification or complete praise or complete proclamation of God. So great thoughts and emails, and I say that we take this to Greg and we demand answers. That's what I say. So
That's right. We say to him, you will not leave until you give us these answers.
get this right.
Well, and can I just say, that is one of the things that I love about our community, our church body, is because we are invited and welcome to wrestle and ask questions, push back, nudge, and say, I don't know about that. And it's never like, Greg is never going to be like, how dare you question
right.
what I had to say?
That's so
It
funny
just,
because even
right?
thinking of Greg doing that is funny because he's just
No,
not like that
right?
at all.
It's just not the way that it is. And so I love that. And I love that we have opportunities like the MuseCast to just kind of talk a little more. And I really believe we are fully trying to embody our tagline of learning to love together. Like, we are learning to be a more loving people in all of the ways together. And that means that we wrestle with stuff and we, poke things and we, not just to be, a turd about it, but out of a genuine curiosity and a wondering. And so I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah. Yep. Amen. So that is that. And the other thing too is the other reason why I'm tap dancing around answering it more fully is because it's such a good it was such a good email that I really want to look at the Greek there and find out
Yeah.
if the Greek corresponds with Stephanie's assessment of how these words are used in our modern time. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we can give a general like, well, this is what I think, and then there are other times where we need to process a bit and dig a little deeper. And so I love again that we have the space to do that. And so
Yeah.
stay tuned, Stephanie. Dan
That's
is
right.
going to get you all that you need. All right, Dan Kent, I feel like it's time. Do you feel like it's time?
Woohoo!
Yes, it's time. Nugget time. Nugget
All
time.
right.
All right. I have a very short and sweet nugget.
I think
I
you
mean,
should close.
it's a quote. Oh, okay. Okay, great.
Because
right.
if it's short and sweet, it sounds like a good bow.
Boom.
Would you agree with that?
Bow. Yeah, I think it's a good bow because there's not going to be a ton of pontificating around it. It's just going to be boom, what it is.
Yeah. I don't think I have a ton of pontificating either. I really, part of the, what I really liked about this sermon is his takeaways, in particular, not feeding the beast, not falling into the propaganda machine and just always like wanting more. And just recognizing that so much of our striving is birthed out of discontentment. And that was the devil's original temptation. With Adam and Eve in the garden, a lot of people say that it was, Adam and Eve's their pride where they wanted to be like God and they wanted more. But you can't get to that point without first being disappointed with where you're at. And so I tend to argue that their original problem was disappointment, that they weren't satisfied with this incredible garden with all these animals and like everything they could possibly want. And God dwelled with them. And even that wasn't enough. And they were convinced, they were duped into thinking that it wasn't good enough. And that's the original temptation, is just convincing us that what we have isn't good enough. And I tell you what, and I've just seen so many times where people, they realize how good it really was when they lose it, when it's gone. And that's with relationships, that's with belongings. It's just so many times I've seen that where I just didn't know how good it was until it was gone. And that's part of the unveiling in our lives that I've been played. And hopefully
Yeah.
people, if you experience that, hopefully you see that you've been played and learn from that. And I think the lesson to learn is to really find why you're grateful for what you have. And that's the best way to cut off striving for more and always being hungry for more, is just really loving what you have and what you, and when I say what you have, I don't just mean, the things on your shelves and stuff like that, but like just like your, the fact that you can take a nap. I mean, that's a great thing, and being able to wash your hands, and just like simple stuff like that. Go for a walk. I can go for a walk. Not everybody can walk. A lot of people
Yeah.
have, physical stuff that they can't do that. Um, and so just being grateful for all of those, the more grateful you can be for simple things, the more you end up sabotaging the propaganda machine and the strive for more. Which brings me to my nugget verse, which is 1 Thessalonians 5, 6, 16 and 17. And it says this, rejoice. This is Paul talking, and Paul says, rejoice always. Not sometimes, but always be rejoicing. Pray continually. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in King Jesus. And I just think that's actually 16, 17, and 18 of First Thessalonians 5. But I just think that is so good to always be giving thanks. And that is my nugget.
Amen. I love it. All right. No pontification. I'm just going to say this famous quote, and I'm not going to credit it because some people be like, oh, why are you quoting that bozo? So I'm just going to say it's a helpful quote. And it, I think, perfectly puts a bow on our conversation.
Who's the bozo? Wait a minute. It's not like Darth Vader, is it? Okay.
No, it was
Okay.
Han Solo. No, no, it's not. No, 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 no. That we'll talk about in post-production. Oh, crud. Now I just lost it.
I'm sorry. I
Oh
blew it.
my goodness. Dan Kent, what just happened?
I am so sorry.
Oh,
I'm
okay. Filibuster.
Yeah, well, here's what I'll say. I feel really bad. Like normally I switch the camera so it's focused on, now it's been on like the dual cam. I just realized it. And
Oh,
so fortunately, you weren't like picking your nose or anything. So that worked out
well,
all
that's a
right.
good
So
thing. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Here we go. Here's my bow. Here's my nugget. Crud. Dan Kent, what just happened? Okay. When you are discontent, you always want more, more, more. Your desire can never be satisfied. But when you practice contentment, you can say to yourself, oh, yes, I already have everything that I really need.
That's great.
No,
Yep.
nothing else. That's it. All right. We stumbled through today. Thank you for being here. Wacky cameras and all. Thanks for tuning in. And yes, sincerely, thank you for sending in your questions and your comments. They are much appreciated.
You can send those in right here.
Yeah, show them. There we go. That's it. For those of you who didn't get your answers fully, just stay tuned. It will come. We promise it will come. Tune in next week as we continue the conversation, because guess what? On Sunday, there's going to be another sermon. And guess what? It's going to be in Revelation. Yeah. It's going to be amazing. So good. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.